I think I'm going to be one of them old people in the room that's going to be like, we ain't got time for that shit. We did that already. And I'm going to be like, say something else. We did that already. Like, you young, you got a new brain. You should come up with new shit. Like, we played that song. We did that. We litigated that terrain. Why are we defining stuff that was defined 30 years ago? Why are we redefining stuff that's already been defined? Just tell me what you mean. Let me tell you what I mean. Let's come to an agreement and let's move, because we ain't got time. We do not have time. Like, my energy is all on. We don't. Bear with me. I'm going to go on a little rant. And my rant is that we on the progressive side have twisted up intersectionality. And we've twisted it up such that we have not agreed, metaphorically speaking, to move through the intersection unified. We've gotten stuck in the intersection. And while we're there, people are making up new rules. And those new rules show up as new words. And everybody got a new word. So we can't move because we're in the biblical Tower of Babel. Right? I don't understand you. You don't understand me. And because we don't understand each other, all of a sudden we got a little beef. You say this word the wrong way. I say that word the wrong way. And next thing you know, somebody's getting canceled. But we haven't moved, bruh. The point of an intersection is to move through in an organized way.
Welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast. My name is Ashanti Branch, and I'm really glad you joined us. As you can see, I'm on location here in New York City. I'm here in Times Square. This is actually where today's guest is from, Steve Vassor. And Steve is a father, a husband, he's a DJ. He's the co-founder of Mix for Change. And in this conversation, we're going to talk about a lot of topics. We're going to talk about leadership, men, emotions, all the things we talk about in Taking Off the Mask podcast. But Steve and I go way back. We go back to my fellowship at the Campaign for Black Male Achievement. We go back to the Restoration Retreat, and so many opportunities that he and I had to connect, sometimes virtually, sometimes in person, but definitely with a spirit of brotherhood and making this world a better place for our young men. So excited for this podcast. As you know, like, in order for us to do these episodes, sometimes we are moving around a lot. Now, we've mostly done the podcast virtually. This episode with Steve, even though he's from here in New York, was done virtually. So I'm here in New York, but I didn't get a chance to meet up with him this time. But we're definitely looking forward to more opportunities to connect. And in this conversation, the one thing I want to point out is, we are here in New York for this award, for the Anthem Award, Silver Prize, that the award ceremony was yesterday. And tonight with Dr. Niobe Way, we get to go to a film called Close. This is about friendships. Friendships that go haywire, that go awry when we get older and we grow apart, but that are complicated to difficult to leave. And so in this episode, as you hear us talk about leadership and the challenges of leadership and the challenges of how do you create the space for us to speak our truth, to request what we need, and to hold those in our teams and people around us accountable to support our needs. That's so important. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please, if you have not yet made a mask, you can go to millionmask.org. And for those who are brand new, the front of the mask, what we call, are the things that we gladly let the world see about us. The back of the mask are the things that we don't usually let people see. And through these conversations, one picture and 6 words, we hope to create a world where people remember that there is more to you than people can see by just looking at you. There's more to you than people can see by just looking at you. And we look forward to you staying tuned for all the things that are happening. We're about to hit our 100,000 mask milestone here in the next 45 or so days. So stay tuned for that. And we look forward to you being a part of the Million Mask movement. Take care, everybody. Well, Steve Vassor, welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Ashanti. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this podcast.
Man, I'm glad we had that little quick chat before we got everything started. But listen, I would like you to just introduce yourself to folks. What do you want them to know about you before we jump into these masks?
Yeah. So my name is Steve Vassor. I am a resident of New York City, and what I want folks to know is, first of all, first and foremost, um, I'm a I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm also working on it by day. I consult to organizations, and occasionally I also DJ wherever there's music to be found. You might find me behind some turntables, getting it in. That's what I want folks to know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad that we get to get in this mix of like talking about these emotional masks that we have found ourselves wearing sometimes, and that we get a chance to, in these conversations, to normalize the fact that there's so much more to each of us. There's so much more to us than people can see. There's so much more than they may think. But if we get to have these conversations that are more constant and robust, we recognize that we have so much in common. There's so
Mhm.
much more to each of us. And if we only thought about it, that it's more than what looks like on the outside, that tells us whether we have something in common. So I'm excited to be in this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, good brother.
So, Steve, I wanted to, as a guest, and we were so thankful to have you. You get to decide who goes first. You know, uh, for folks who, just for some transparency, Steve and I had a chance this summer. Or was it summer? It was like late or early, no,
Yeah.
fall. It was
No
fall to
summer.
be at the restoration retreat,
Yep.
and there were young men there who had a chance to experience this work. This mask. I always carry masks. So anybody who knows me know that it's in my bag somewhere close. And it wasn't originally the plan, but it worked out beautifully. And I was so thankful to be asked to be able to share some of the work that I think I was called to do in this world. And I'm so glad that you and I get to have this conversation here.
Hmm. Hmm.
So as
No,
our
thank
guest,
you.
you get to decide who goes first. Either you want to go first or you want me to go first.
So, I'm a guest in your house, and so I think you should go first and set the pace, and I will follow suit.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna show you this mask, and I'll show you the picture, and then the what I wrote, the words I wrote. So that's the mask I drew, inspired by some poster I saw in LA on a wall somewhere.
Mm,
Not sure what it is, but the words I wrote today were serious, intense, and caring.
mm,
And here's a look at that image: serious, intense, and caring. Um, these words are standing out to me for a couple of reasons right now in this moment. I was having a conversation recently around, I think I was being interviewed for something, and I was talking about, you know, when I feel myself being super intense, like when I feel myself getting worked up about something, I'm like, and I'm always feeling like, okay, I gotta like get clarity about where the intensity is coming from. Is it coming from worry? Is it coming from fear? Is the intensity coming because I'm like feeling overloaded? Like usually when I go into an intense mode where I'm kind of like moving so fast and moving faster than my thoughts sometimes, um, is because I'm really caring about something. Like I'm really like it, on the outside, it could be like it could look frantic, but in my mind, I'm like deeply passionate or deeply like trying to get something done, and I have to be careful sometimes that it it gets defined clearly for people on the outside. Because sometimes if it's not defined clearly, people will misjudge it. Like they will judge the intensity as mean. I mean, I've had many students who were like, "You're so mean." I'm like, "Mean? Don't you know I love you? Don't you know I care
mhm,
about you? Like, don't you know that I want the best for you? Don't you know, like, but because my intensity is like seeing when I saw young people like disconnecting from their education and not giving their best, it came out with this such an intensity that it wasn't coming from a place of anger. It was coming from a place of love and care, but I didn't define it. And when you leave people the room to define it for you, like I'm in this body that usually is like, oh, you're angry. You're angry. And so I'm always like hypersensitive about not being the angry one. And so I think I wrote caring today because as much as I'm serious about a lot of things and I'm I feel intense about a lot of things, or I share intensity, and maybe the word is intensity and as opposed to intense, but caring is where usually the root of it is. It's something I don't care about, I'm just gonna be like, whatever, I'm gonna move on. But it's usually when I'm caring about something a lot is when that type of intensity comes out. So yeah, that's the front. That's what's feeling pretty present on the front today.
So it's really interesting when you share this, and here's mine. I drew what as close as I could, a shape of my head and a smiley face, right? A
Yeah.
modified smiley face with, all teeth,
Yeah.
and the words there, when I think about what people are seeing and why they approach is smart, insightful, and cheery,
Yeah.
right? Um, you know, and what's interesting about when I did this, I thought about the reason folks approach, that I tend to let folks know, or the mask I put forward allows folks to approach and engage, and
Yeah.
engage as deeply as they would like to,
Yeah.
right? That's allowed me into rooms, it's allowed me into spaces, into conversations, and into folks' lives, sometimes deeper than either I should or actually want to be. um,
Yeah.
but always an adventure.
Hmm.
um, and that face, while I like to think that I'm smart, while I certainly enjoy sharing insights, not always as cheery as I would like to be. So
Hmm.
I'm always working to balance, and it's situational. The
Yeah.
DJing allows me to um actually put on a reverse mask. This is going to be a little bit funky, bear with me for a
I
second.
got you. I got you.
Music is my medicine, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm pulling together songs, there's a number of different puzzles that I'm bringing together. What mood am I in? What's the journey I want to take folks through?
Yeah.
I always, when I DJ, I start with something slow or slower paced and move up. I'm going to use your word, move up in intensity. So I might start on some old school, like Stephanie Mills stuff, and land
Hmm.
in a disco record by the time we're done. We might be talking Dionne Warwick and having a nice chill glass of white wine at the top of the set, and by the end of the set, it's a sock in the corner and furniture has been moved. And you're like, what happened? Who did it? And why am I sweating? Right? Uh, and so, and what's behind that mask is there are things I'm working through, because I had to
Yeah.
really think about, why do I keep moving in that kind of direction sonically, and I move in that
Yeah.
direction sonically because um, I am not attempting to seduce people. Like, I like a
Yeah.
certain song or certain set of tracks, and I don't want to get hung up there. Like, we can do that all
Yeah.
day and all night. However, I want to move. There's love songs that are disco records, and there
Hmm.
are super violent records that are super slow. I mean, our young people have a
Yeah.
whole diet of it right now. Um, and so there's puzzle piecing, there's me working out my own stuff,
Yeah.
through the music, through words, visuals that other folks have created, and stitching it together where it
Yeah.
builds to a crescendo, and I'm out. And I'm
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Um, the cheery Steve that's in this picture, though, I get allowed
Hmm.
into a lot of folks' faces. You get more places with smiles than you do with frowns.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm also from a school where the word no is the strongest word in the vocabulary, right? And that's not always a cheery word. Your nose what might
Hmm.
lead you to a space. Um, Quick side note, you brought up, I love that you brought up, and appreciate that you brought up serious, intense, and caring, because where my intensity tends to show up is when it's two places now. It's places where things are disorganized and they could be
Hmm.
organized better,
Yeah. Yeah.
and or where um Where it's really negative is where I feel like I'm not being heard. And so it becomes problematic. And if those two collide and get into a
Yeah.
mix, I have to disconnect and like go somewhere, because what I try to do to reconcile it is not going to feel good to the folks involved.
Yeah.
And so and it ultimately comes out of love, right? It ultimately comes from a space of love. However, you know, it's not going to sound or feel like that. It's going to sound strict and disciplinarian and you know, like an asshole. I'm going to, you know, I hope y'all bleeping things out. But it's not going to sound, you know, warm and fuzzy,
Yeah.
because we got we have several things, several switches have been flipped in the same moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, several tables have been flipped in the same room at the same time. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and so the intensity shows up, like what I've had to learn to do over the years relative to intensity. Man, I'm so glad you went first, because you left some, you brought up some stuff for me that helped me talk through talk some younger people yesterday
Nice.
about how to work through some of that stuff. And
Yeah.
and I'll get to it in a second. The perceptual piece, right? That,
Yeah.
you know, folks see this smiling face or this approachable spirit, and they're like, "Oh, I want more of that because I get enough people frowning at me all day."
Yeah.
And what this allows me to do is kind of get a sense, you know, and it allows me to help them where it's appropriate and makes sense. It allows me to share, but and help them move a little bit further. Um, intensity and perception, um, definitions and judgment. You know, you brought that up earlier. Who defines? And I learned a really important lesson during pandemic around definitions.
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
and so that has me in a space of what you mean.
Yeah.
Like cheery, insightful Steve is now like smart Steve is all about what do you mean when you say, right? If you say X, let's get clear about your definition of X versus my definition of X.
Yeah.
Because if we're not, then misunderstandings come in. And where there's misunderstanding, there's no alignment. And where there's no alignment, there is, of course, chaos and confusion.
Yeah.
It can set in. And so clarity becomes key. It also reduces negative judgment. Um, so what I had to learn to do, and I share this with you because of the intensity piece. I got the same reaction when I was an executive director years ago, and in a place where, and it's happened since then. I think in a place where folks were one of my triggers, for lack of a better term, this place of not being heard. They
Yeah.
were over talking me, and they persistently over talked me, you know, whether it was in meetings or, you know, in discussions, and didn't realize that folks were over talking me. And I'm like, look, I can't hear you anymore because you are talking over me. Like, let me finish. Let me finish my statement, and then you can finish your statement, and then we can understand what we're trying to get at. But if you're going to over talk me, then clearly I need to stop talking. And at the point where I said that, markers laid. Like, let's be clear. My
Yeah.
boundary has been hit. You're like at the boundary. So if it happens again,
Yeah.
now we're in a different place. Now we're in a different place. And so, because it's either disrespectful, you didn't hear me, or you didn't want to hear me. But one of those three in my brain
Yeah.
equals I'm in a whole other place. And now I got to push back. And I'm going to have to push back harder the more it happens. And not harder from a violent perspective, but I don't care about perception, because now we're in a disrespectful terrain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Once we enter disrespect, you know, we're in different terrain. So at any rate, all that to say, there are moments where I've had to suspend judgment in the interest of what's going to keep everything safe, what's going to keep us moving. There are moments when intensity, people don't like arrogant folks.
Yeah.
Except in certain situations. So that means they like them when they like them. Like if I'm in court, I need an arrogant attorney, right? I need my attorney to be like, I'm going to eat that case. When I'm running my business and I'm sitting with an accountant or I'm interviewing someone to do books, I need them to be arrogant.
They know what
why?
they're doing.
Because they know what they're doing. Like, listen, your books are going to be clean.
Yeah.
You can rest on a pillow of peace tonight.
Yes.
Because I did that. If I bring my young people to Adelante Nina and I say, I do that, I expect the staff to be like, we do this. We may not always get it right, but this is what we do. We do this. Sign a paper and fear not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we like arrogance when we like it, and we like certain things when we like it. And that has got me to a place where the judgments, and it took me a while to get there, where the judgments don't matter, because the definitions that lead to the judgments are based on other people's perceptions, which I can't control.
Yeah, for real.
Yo.
and I think that even right there, when you talk about like I can't control other people's behavior. I can't, and I need to communicate clearly where my needs are and what my expectations are. And then and at the same time trying to keep it in a place where my words are being heard as opposed to my energy being translated to mean something else. Right? Because as I tell you what you don't maybe want to hear, you could be hearing things that I'm not really saying. Because you've now, whatever your past experience of somebody being direct and clear and direct and clear. Sometimes it could be like, it could be translated. It gets projected, right? Because a projection happens sometimes. And I think that's the part where it's like, how do I show, same thing, like how do I show this clarity and clear and being really intense to get this thing done while you not defining it as another meaning of it, right? Like I think that you making it mean something that it doesn't mean. In our work, we have these questions we ask some of our young people in different experiences. I'll say to them when they're stuck up with words, I'm like, what are you saying that's not being heard? And then another question is, what do you need to say that's not being said? Right? The last one is, what are people thinking you're saying that you're not saying? Right? Because if you can help people begin to like translate the idea that there are ways of being heard. Oh, wait, you're saying this, but people are not hearing it. Oh, I've never heard you say that, right? I can translate like, oh, actually, I never heard you say that before. Or if you're being misunderstood, to be able to help you translate that is so important too, for conversation, for connection, for relationship building, I think those are the pieces that we're trying to deal with, which is really powerful. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that front of the mask. So take a breath, because we're about to move to the back.
Yeah. Yes.
So you asked me to go first. So
okay.
I have a blank here, but for some reason I feel like it's coming. So I'm gonna just tell you when I'm. Oh, I already just felt it. I just felt it. Okay. So here are the two that are here, and there's a blank. So worried. I wrote food addiction. And the last one that I'm not right now talking about is like the watching my health kind of, I'll use the word deteriorate because it's at early stages of that. Like my health is, and so like right now I'm not sick, but I also know that my weight has been elevating in the direction that I don't need, as an engineer, this is not the way the curve I want it to be going. Right. And when I think about food addiction, I think about how I go to food for comfort, how I am flour and sugar are my weaknesses. Definitely when they're together. I could do without bread and I can do without candy. But you put some flour and sugar in the same bowl and you mix it
Yes,
up with some whatever else is, I
yep.
will gladly devour it on any coast, any continent. You know what I'm saying? Milk or no milk, coffee or no coffee. Like, just give me a pastry or a cookie or a donut or a. I shouldn't even be listing them all right. My mouth is watering listing them. But I know that oftentimes when I'm in that, when I'm in on a bender, like, and I think people who don't know about food addiction or any addiction at all, they would be like, just put the cookies down. They would think, just put it down. And it's not until you have tried to put something down that actually you feel calling you, you hear it calling you. Like it's something I don't wish on anyone. And people, I don't compare it to anybody else's addiction. I just compare it to my own. That I know what it feels like to be like, I know it's not good for me. I know it's not, but I enjoy it. I like it. I want more of it, and it's never enough. I heard someone say this quote that says, "One is too many, and 1,000 is never enough." Because once I have one, like I imagine most normal people around sweets, they could have like 4 cookies and be done. Like if I open a pack of Oreos, it's gonna get finished.
Right.
Like
Right.
I may give it a day, I may give it 2 days, but it's unhealthy. It's not. It doesn't even make any logical engineering sense. It makes no sense. But all I know is that there's a draw. And so anyway, I'm speaking about it just right now because it's really present, and I'm really in this phase of getting myself back in order, in shape, and I've let it go way too far and too long, and so I'm in this detox phase right now. So I find myself feeling a little irritable, like like I still got to work, right? I still got to I still got to be around people, but I feel the draw of like. And then tomorrow's Thanksgiving, right? So it's like,
Oh,
okay, it's like, should I just go on I'm like, oh, well, just one day,
right.
But my rationale would be, okay, tomorrow, just go all out, and then
Right.
Friday, but I know what's gonna happen on Friday. It's gonna be leftovers, and then I'm gonna be
Yes.
like, so I'm already in this like currently behind the scenes planning. When I leave work today, am I gonna go buy some stuff that I really enjoy, or am I gonna try and pretend like I'm not, like it's a battle, and so I wish I didn't battle it, but it started young. It started when I was 8 years old, trying to not deal with stuff that I need to deal with, and going to food as a place of comfort. And so it's my 8-year-old in me who didn't get what he needed, so yeah, that's really present right now.
Oof. That's heavy. And I will describe a scent to you that is wafting out of my stove. And hopefully it's an encouragement to do it different, brother. And this is gonna be the worst encouragement you have ever received in your life. Ever. But there are currently six yams roasting in the stove right now, right? In preparation for all the things you just talked about. Maybe a couple of them are going to wind up in something that might tone towards healthy, but the rest of them going to be in a pie. And so, and what's interesting in it's the least helpful. I shouldn't have started there, but it's just like I'm sitting here like this thing is filling my house and my lungs, and I am now officially. I feel you. And what's interesting is my wife and I decided that instead of because of tomorrow, instead of like doing a whole bunch of food prep, we're going to go out to dinner, right? Because usually the night before Thanksgiving, I'll do the turkey. I will do a roast and baste, which is this. I'll get the turkey prepped and then get it in the stove low and slow. And every hour I will go over to the bird, I will baste the bird, and I will have a drink. And then I'll go sit down and relax. And the next hour I'll have a nice drink. And so all night while the turkey's getting basted, I'm getting roasted, or while the turkey's getting roasted, I'm getting basted. Either way, we're both done by the time the morning comes. Uh, so this year
Oh,
we're
that's
doing
great.
something we're doing something a little different, in that vein. And I think, I really, with all that humor in there, I just want to, in all seriousness, thank you for sharing both that
Mm,
food addiction, the worry, and also, watching your health, right? Like you're watching this happen. And I think a piece of it is the awareness of it. And then
yeah.
there's, I just picked up this book that I'm looking at, and I'll probably grab it. It's called Atomic Habits. And it
Mm,
is these, it literally just hit the shelves not too long ago. What attracted me to it was, and it's by the executive editor of, I believe, Entrepreneur Magazine.
okay.
And he talks about the small things that one can do to make
Yeah.
massive changes. So you've heard this principle, little things, big change, little habits,
Yeah.
big change. And this is yet another. The reason I picked up two copies is one of my great friends is mentioned in the book. Um,
Nice.
but the reason I look over at that is because I think it is those, it's a combination of the small habits, the letting go
Yeah.
of one or two things. It's not the
Yeah.
massive behavioral change, it's the smaller things that you do.
Yeah.
And at some point, my wife and I are going to be on a similar journey probably soon, where we're talking about eradicating refined sugar, white flour, so on and so forth from the diet. We've converted to brown sugar, but we're still consuming it, like
Yeah.
who did it and ran,
Yeah.
like it's going out of style. But looking at, these small habits, like moving from one thing and then, sort of removing it.
Yeah.
Um, One of my favorite examples, and I hope this will help you, is how I learned many years ago how the Chinese teach their children to drink tea. And what they do
Mm,
is they start with, and I don't know if you've heard this before, but they start
no.
with one or two sugar cubes in a stewed or brewed cup of tea. And
Okay.
then eventually they wean them off of the sugar, removing more and more sugar, but leaving the tea behind, so that
Yeah.
there comes a point where the child is only drinking tea unsweetened, and not craving the sugar associated with it. And so
Mm,
it's, again, it goes back to, it's one of those examples of, again, very small micro habits, atomic habits, whatever it is, shifting, your own behavior. And I think your worry is a fence, for that.
yeah.
And I think, your awareness, you're watching it, is
Yeah.
also the fence, like saying, like, no, we're not going, this is where we're not going, is sort of what I hear, so
Yeah.
it's going to be about building and mending that fence and fortifying it. And eventually, I think you'll get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I can also tell you, I have a great friend in Florida who went through a tremendous process, actually was diagnosed with diabetes,
Mm,
and was morbidly obese, and,
yeah.
went and had a gastric sleeve, but not before she literally changed her entire lifestyle, moved away from the
Yeah.
places and the people that encouraged her old lifestyle, and moved to an entire new place and new lifestyle, including the gastric work. So
Yeah.
there was some technology involved, right? There was
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
absolute, she had some work done, but on the same notion. And when I say work done, I mean the gastric sleeve was it. But she
Yeah.
adopted Zumba. She let go of a lot of the foods that were killing
Mm,
her, let go of the people and the places and spaces that, didn't fulfill her, like shed all of that, and
yeah.
is in a whole other space. So that takes me, that thought, it's amazing, brother. You and I. So I have a bunch of slash in here. So
Yeah.
the first one is I'm optimistic slash hopeful is what I
Yeah.
wrote. You'll see the second one, worried and slash doubtful.
Yeah.
And the third is I'm impatient.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I have my worry was always about what's the worst thing that's going to happen, and I was constantly looking for that,
Yeah.
right? And so given everything that's occurred, excuse me one second.
Yeah.
Could you
Yeah.
answer
Yeah.
that, please? Given everything that has occurred over the
Yeah.
last few years,
Yeah.
um, my worries were sort of imaginations, but
Yeah.
those little monsters decided to all show up embodied in a president and these freaking racists,
Yeah.
Charlottesville, George Floyd being killed, Breonna Taylor. Say
Yeah.
all the, don't just say the names, say all the names, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this has been a slow rolling nightmare for me for years. I mean, for decades,
Mm.
right? For
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
The people who've been disappeared, the people who are unnamed, who only their families know their names,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
From that day,
Yeah.
the Atlanta child murders. I mean, I'm going back to those days when this stuff was happening.
Yeah.
Um, to we come to pandemic and the whole world shuts down and everything. Let me tell you how really like crazy it got.
Yeah.
The Monday before we learned, the same day, it wasn't even the Monday before.
Yeah.
The same day that George Floyd was killed is also the same day that there was a black man who walked into Central Park
Mm.
to bird watch because that's what he does,
Yeah.
and he happened across a white woman and her dog at the same time. And she, he asked her to leash her dog. The dog was off leash, and the whole scene. My wife and I were no more than a quarter mile away from all of this happening because it was just one of those days we were just taking a chill stroll. And so it's like, what? And then what? All in the same day. And then by Saturday, the whole world had just imploded. And it was only after all of the marching had occurred that we then learned, oh, Breonna Taylor had been killed too.
Mm.
And so I say that to you because some of my worst fears, this idea, some of the things I worried about, they manifest, they showed up in this very intense and short period of time. And that, led me into very doubtful space. And when I get into those spaces, it's hard to bring myself back out. Not to mention, I had a whole separation from CBMA, from the campaign for Black Male Achievement, because it was going into its sunset period.
Yeah.
And for me, that was a pinnacle moment, a goal,
Yeah.
something where I saw a lot of things coming together at the same time in that
Yeah.
role. And I had thrown so much of myself in there that I probably was all over. I was probably a hot mess anyway. So it probably made sense for me to not be there any longer. The flip of it, what's interesting is the first word on the other side of my mask was optimistic and hopeful.
Mm.
And it's like, it's all we got. We have seen Pandora's box, ripped open. We're still dealing with the fallout, with the detritus, with the dumpster juice that, has fallen out of what was 2016 to 2020 with that particular president.
Yeah.
And the idea that this too shall pass,
Yeah.
thankfully it happened. We moved through those moments, and it all, so the space I'm in, the space I had to move the energy I have to move with is an energy that is undergirded by optimism and hope, right?
Yeah.
And said a different way, faith. That I mean, I got to trust, I got to know in my bones that it's going to work out. It may not work out for me, but it's also, it's got to work out, because trouble don't last. And if trouble lasts, it's because people love trouble, right? Anarchists love trouble. I mean, in your neck of the woods, I was there, going back a step. I was there when Eric Garner was killed. I was in Oakland, literally in downtown Oakland. And I had never understood what anarchists meant until I was there, and they had run through and smashed all the glass they could find around City Hall.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of folks for whom there's never enough trouble.
Yeah.
Know? Those are the kind of folks for whom, like, if it was some trouble, like, let's make more.
That's right.
If it's on fire, let's go find some gasoline and throw it on. These are the folks who put pallets of bricks in New York City, around Manhattan, pallets of bricks, dropped them off next to trash cans and waited for it to get dark.
Yeah.
And then went ahead and we don't have loose bricks in the city anywhere, bruh. Anywhere.
There's special delivery.
Come on. Special delivery.
And I think we talked about anarchists. So thank you for spanning that word, because it's like, if I'm not careful, and what I have decided to watch on my feed, my algorithm has fed me, I watch a lot of tragic stuff that happens in schools and with kids and young people. And if I'm not careful, I could come to a place of believing that there is no hope.
Right.
But I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it not feeling like I'm optimistic about the future, even though inside, every time I scroll, I'm just like, another one, another life, another future, another school, another kid, another gun. It could often, and I try and stay cheery. I try and stay positive, even though sometimes it feels like there's not a reason to.
Right. And that is, so it also, the mask, the flip of that mask, it feels Pollyannish, right?
Yeah.
But that is not the preponderance of young people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is not the preponderance of what's happening in the world. That is massive holes and massive losses.
Yeah.
To those families, to those communities, to those cities, to us, right? As a collective, massive. But that ain't all of us.
That's right.
The numbers just don't bear out. You need more people. And so that's why I love the work. I love the work you're doing. I love finding, what keeps me hopeful is there are folks who have their shoulder to the grindstone.
Yeah.
And who got their foot on the gas pedal. No, all gas, no brakes. Like,
man,
we know the troubles that are out here.
Yeah.
We know the difficulties. Just developmentally, what it takes to get from adolescence to adulthood is its own. Listen, bro, nations have fallen, right? Things have crumbled. But just getting people from adolescence to adulthood is not easy. But there are folks that are doing it, and they're doing it well. And so for me, it's not unfounded. It's just that I can't see it.
Yeah.
And and so, as Jay-Z would say, somewhere in America, right? Like, somewhere in America, somebody's doing okay.
Yeah.
It ain't all struggle. Like, it's a struggle, but it ain't all struggle, because then we in a different ball game.
That's right. That's right.
And then the last of it, man, I will tell you, my last word is impatience. I hit 50 this year. Thank God. I made it to 50.
Congratulations.
Listen, brother, congratulate my mama. Like, she got a 50-year-old son, right? Like, and what's amazing is I'm here, but I'm also really conscious of the clock.
Yeah.
And so going back to the idea of intensity, that's the other place where intensity comes. I think I'm going to be one of them old people in the room that's going to be like, we ain't got time for that shit. We did that already. And I'm going to be like, say something else. We did that already. Like, you young, you got a new brain. You should come up with new shit. Like, we played that song. We did that. We litigated that terrain. Why are we defining stuff that was defined 30 years ago? Why are we redefining stuff that's already been defined? Just tell me what you mean. Let me tell you what I mean. Let's come to an agreement and let's move, because we ain't got time. We do not have time. Like, my energy is all on, we don't, bear with me. I'm going to go on a little rant. And my rant is that we on the progressive side have twisted up intersectionality. And we've twisted it up such that we have not agreed, metaphorically speaking, to move through the intersection unified. We've gotten stuck in the intersection. And while we're there, people are making up new rules. And those new rules show up as new words. And everybody got a new word. So we can't move because we're in the biblical Tower of Babel. Right? I don't understand you. You don't understand me. And because we don't understand each other, all of a sudden we got a little beef. You say this word the wrong way. I say that word the wrong way. And next thing you know, somebody's getting canceled, but we haven't moved, bruh. The point of an intersection is to move through in an organized way. And I just need us to do that. And so my impatience is that of a person who wants us to move, who wants us not to litigate stuff, the old stuff. And when I say litigate, we don't have to fight old wars like that. Some of this language, it's not ours to begin with. One. Secondly, who cares? Like, we got people, some of this is life or death. You want to be conceptual about it? Well, go geek out over there, but get out of the way so that people who are doing the work can move through to where we're trying to get, which is freedom, liberation, continuation, growth, expansion. Like, let's do that rather than getting caught up in semantics. And so it's not, I probably shouldn't be saying this into a hot open mic. However, it is where the impatience comes from. It's the other side of that mask that I wear. It's not that I intend to be rude or disrespectful. It is that I think some of that stuff needs to be put in a white paper, and then you go preach on it or speak on it or book on it somewhere else. The folks that are working need stuff they can move with and move through together so that ultimately we can win. And there's room for all of it. There's room for the academics. There's room for the athletes. There's room for, the astrophysicists, the Afrofuturists, and on. It's room for all of that. What there is no room for, though, is stasis. And I feel like we've been in a talking stasis.
When you said what you said about impatience, I really appreciate it. And I want to close with this piece. I want to say probably and I'm going to come back to what you said in the beginning, is that maybe what you may be called to do is to start off with some Stevie and people keep on moving and bring it through a musical lens of how we need to move forward. I think sometimes in the words of I think it's hard for people to get it, but I think with music, there's a rhythm of the heart that is undeniable. And I think that you may be called to help people take a journey from where we were, that we're not there anymore, to where we can be and where we are right now to where we're going. I imagine music can do some of that too.
Yeah, it's that's why it's my medicine. It helps me work out some of that and work out some of those thoughts. And you're absolutely right, man. Whether it's Roy Ayers or Curtis Mayfield, some of those artists. I mean, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, a Jay-Z. These artists and musicians use sounds, whether it's their voice or instruments or found sounds or whatever it is. They use it to express, I think, what the English, they express in a way outside of English language's capabilities.
That's right.
And and so I'm grateful for that. And then, if there are folks that want to listen in on that with me and puzzle through, I'm down. Like, let's do it.
Well, where can people hear your music, or where you want people to like follow this journey? Like, where is there a place you want people to follow your work?
Yeah. So I've got a couple of websites. The one that is, first of all, is stevevassor.com.
Great.
That one is still under construction. And
Nice.
I'm going to unveil that thing by or before Christmas, because it's been under construction for too long. But I also have a website focused on my DJ work, djstevevassor.com. Can't get any easier than that. And there's a community that I've built on a platform called twitch.tv. It's a gaming platform, but a lot of DJs have gone rogue and decided to turn it into a DJ platform. And so I'm there most Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, with a group of, doing an event I call The Vibes. Every Friday. We started in pandemic. We're going to continue until the wheels fall off. And there's a community there of people that are doing dope stuff. And what I appreciate about that community is they love music and they also love serving people, right? And so it's just a wonderful sort of group. There are about 450 people in that community as it sits, small but mighty.
Well, we're going to link all of these in the show notes. And brother, I could talk to you forever as we did in the mountains. I want to tell you, thank you for making time. Thank you for being a part of the Taking Off the Mask podcast. I'll say to all you folks who are listening, look, Steve and I shared our mask here publicly, but you don't have to do that. You can actually share yours privately, anonymously at millionmasks.org. And so please, I invite you to go do that. Steve, thank you for being on the call with us. I appreciate you.
Oh man, thank you for having me, and much love to everyone that's listening. And examine your masks. Thank you for this opportunity.
Man, thank you, brother. So good to see you. Take care, folks. See you next time. Peace. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie. Graphics are by Kelly Wong, and a special thanks to the team at Ever Forward, Vanessa Cortez and Choke Allen Alvarez. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast as we cross the 100th episode milestone and begin the work to the next 100. We hope that everyone who's been a part knows that they're a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. And we look forward to you being a part of it as well. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share, as we look forward to continuing to have conversations that matter. Stay tuned for the relaunch of the Million Mask Movement on 11/11/22. That's November 11th of 2022. There's a math problem in there. You can find out more by visiting everforwardclub.org and following us on social media. Take care, and we'll see you soon.